¿Cómo hicieron? En otros capítulos hemos analizado cómo hicieron otros países para resolver problemas que los argentinos todavía no logramos resolver. Esta vez vamos a ir un poco más allá. Vamos a tratar de entender cómo hicieron algunos candidatos en diferentes países, en diferentes elecciones, para ser electos. Y qué mejor que conversar con quien estuvo detrás de estos candidatos. Nada más ni nada menos que con uno de los estrategas de campaña, especialista en campaña más importante del mundo, Dick Morris, el norteamericano, quien fuera asesor y estratega de Bill Clinton desde el inicio de su campaña política allí en el estado de Arkansas, en los Estados Unidos. Un estratega que estuvo detrás de las campañas de cerca de 200 senadores, diputados y gobernadores de toda la Unión Americana. Ahora asesora a Donald Trump, pero además de los Estados Unidos fue quien logró o quien ayudó o quien fue la estratega para que el presidente de una multinacional de refrescos Cola, la más conocida en México, le ganara al famoso Partido Revolucionario Institucional, al PRI. Pero también trabajó en la Colombia de Uribe, trabajó para el Brexit en el Reino Unido, en la Rusia de Yeltsin, en Polonia, en Ucrania con Yushchenko, en Taiwán con Chen, en Japón con Koizumi, en Kenia con Raila Odinga y en América Latina en una gran cantidad de países, en la Argentina con De la Rúa, con López Murphy, con Macri, en sus primeras elecciones. Un verdadero especialista internacional de campañas electorales y del poder. Un verdadero hombre detrás del poder. Muchos dicen el Maquiavelo del siglo XXI. Dick Morris.
Amaneces un día muy feliz. El cielo despejado, un clima fresco pero cálido. Sales a la calle y de repente ves carteles de rostros de completos desconocidos. Hacia un lado, hacia el otro, rostros y rostros gigantes en vallas, rostros que invaden tus redes sociales, rostros con frases recicladas. Es el momento del cambio. Es
Fine.
How do you do? How do you manage yourself to make or to have success in such different societies like Russia, the United States, Argentina,
Kenya. You and
We
I
worked together in Kenya.
Yeah, we did. Then we went on a safari.
Yeah, yeah.
All over the world, there is a global government run by the financial community, by the people who have all the money. And it's a government that doesn't worry about countries. It tries to govern the whole world based on their financial interests. One of the campaigns you didn't mention is I helped work for the Brexit campaign.
The Brexit in the United Kingdom.
Yes, to break off from the European Union.
When the British wanted to go out.
Yep. The key thing here is that there is not a global democracy. There is only a global financial dictatorship run by the rich people of the world. And the democracy is limited to each country, and many of these countries are not democratic. And there are the financial community of the world sends politicians to each of these countries, almost the way Spain used to send colonial governors throughout Latin America. You're in charge of Argentina. You've never been there, but that's okay.
Viceroys.
Viceroys, exactly. And that's really what the main politicians in these countries are, viceroys, where they're sent by the global community to keep them in line. And the problem is that the people, their needs are not being met. And people see themselves increasingly left behind, left out, and having no voice. So all of the campaigns that I've worked on in all of these countries were people who had not been part of the main establishment of the rich money people in these countries. And I brought to these campaigns an idea of using their presidencies and their power to empower the average person. So, for example, Bill Clinton, when he was president, There was Democrats and Republicans in America didn't even speak to each other. And what I worked on with Clinton was triangulation, the idea that we'd take the best from the Democrats, best from the Republicans, and combine it and make it work.
Triangulation was your invention.
Yes. And now with Donald Trump, oddly, he's one of the richest men in public life, but the rich people all hate him.
Yeah.
They all vote Democrat because he doesn't pay attention to what they want. He pays attention only to what the people want. His son once called him the only billionaire who was an average, ordinary person.
Some people believe that this is a little bit populistic way of thinking. It is?
In the U.S., populism is not a criticism.
It's not.
It's almost a compliment. And Trump is very much that. The world said, don't go after China. Let China be huge and let it put people out of work all over the world. That's free enterprise. And Trump said, no, it's not. Not when they fix the prices, not when they manipulate the currency, not when they make it always come out that they're ahead.
Or subsidize their exports.
Yeah, exactly. And the world is now saying, oh, don't blame China for COVID. It wasn't their fault. And Trump said it was their fault. They made this in the first place. They took a virus and they made it deadly. Mm-hmm. They made it easily transmittable to other human beings. And then they either messed it up and it got broken and spread throughout the country, the world, or they deliberately did it. But in either case, people are saying, oh, you can't launch a fight against China. And Trump says, no, they're to blame for this. I'm going to hold them to blame.
How did you start it? How and where and when did you start it?
Well, my father has always been active in politics in New York.
Your father?
My father.
Eugene Morris?
Yes. And in fact, his client was Donald Trump. He was Trump's lawyer. And so I grew up in a heritage of politicians. And then I worked very hard when I was young, as a teenager, at setting up a political machine around New York City. And then I went all over the United States.
You grew up at in the Upper West Side of New York?
Of Manhattan.
Of Manhattan.
The area which is, some people say it's like the left bank of Paris.
Okay.
But it kind of is. And
so when you were young, you started to develop a political career or whatever?
Well, when I was 30 years old,
okay,
I went to Arkansas.
Yeah.
And I met a guy who was 31, Bill Clinton.
Same age.
And we were both starting our careers. And we explored politics together, literally sitting next to each other, working on things based on polling, based on finding what people wanted, what they thought, and then respecting that.
So you met Bill Clinton at his beginning,
and
at the beginning of his career. So you started together.
That's right. We were in the same womb.
Yeah.
And we grew up as political twins almost.
And Hillary?
Well, Hillary was an acquired taste for me. And Hillary has changed over the years, so I don't like Hillary now, but I did for a while. And
but you worked together with Hillary when you were young.
Yeah.
Hillary, you
and Bill. Yeah.
And how was Bill Clinton young in Arkansas?
He was very charming.
Charming.
Everybody loved him. He was a good friend of everybody's. But he would not take tough, strong positions. He was afraid of antagonizing anyone. He wanted everybody to love him.
Okay.
And I told him, no, you're not defined by the people who love you. You're defined by the people that don't like you. So I told him, for example, the utility companies, the electric companies, are raising rates so high.
In Arkansas?
Yeah, if they're your enemies, the people will be your friends. We had a problem in Arkansas where teachers weren't competent, they weren't qualified, they didn't know the history they were supposed to teach. And he fired them and replaced them with good teachers. And the teachers,
Following your advice.
yeah, and the teachers all hated him because of that. And I told him, you make your friends by making your enemies.
And what about the White House? Bill Clinton's finally arrived to the White House. You were there.
In the White House, we worked very hard at trying to implement reforms that we had been working on for years but had been blocked. So, for example, we had these millions of people on welfare getting a check each month and doing nothing for it. And the right wing, the Republicans, said, get them all off welfare and cut the government subsidies. And
Following a very conservative position.
And the left said, no, no, keep them there, and they're entitled to their checks. And Clinton said, well, wait a minute. Let's let them stay on welfare until they get on their feet. Let's give them job training and daycare for their children. But give them a time limit on welfare and make them work while they're on welfare. So we did solutions to problems that neither party was really addressing. Then, after I left Clinton, I decided to become an international consultant.
You go out from the United States,
Yes.
work in the world.
Yes, and I felt that it was kind of my mission to work on democracies around the world, to oppose this financial establishment that ran the world. So in Mexico, you had the PRI that was very corrupt and very not sensitive to the needs of the people.
71 years in power.
That's right. So I made it my mission to defeat them.
And how the president of Coca-Cola of Mexico defeated a very strong political party. How,
Yes.
how
Well,
it happens?
he was very effective in
Vicente Fox.
Vicente Fox, in making people understand that there was no democracy in Mexico. They had the right to vote, but one man owned all the television stations, and you couldn't say anything on television that he didn't approve of. And we talked about how the powerful people in the country ran the lives of the people there. For example, you couldn't have internet in Mexico because the guy who was in charge of the phone company wouldn't let you do it.
Yeah, and I remember a very famous ad, political ad in Mexico about the basket of food.
Yeah.
And
Well, the PRI
yeah,
stayed in power by bribing voters, giving
Okay.
them things. So I had an ad where there was an older lady, an Indian, and she's in her little house, and there's a knock at the door, and she says, "See,
humble people.
humble." And there's a knock at the door, and there's a guy who says, "I'm from the PRI. Who are you going to vote for, senora?" And she said, "Oh, like always, I'm going to vote for the PRI."
Open the door.
And she didn't open the door completely, just enough to see.
Okay.
And then he said, "Oh, bueno," and reached into his truck, took out a huge basket of food and gave it to her. And then he drove away, and she's waving to him from the step.
Smiling.
And her husband says, "Why did you say we're voting for the PRI? We're voting for Fox in the Pan." And now she's at her table eating the food. And she says, "For 71 years, they cheated me. Now I'm cheating them."
Now it's time for cheating them.
El viernes hacemos el debate. Hoy. El viernes. Hoy. El viernes. Hoy.
La voz de Fox se convirtió en el grito de guerra de una sociedad dispuesta a cumplir el sencillo mandato del candidato: sacar al PRI de los pinos.
And how was your experience in Russia? You worked for Yeltsin.
Yes.
Why
Yes.
do you work for Yeltsin?
Well, when I worked for Clinton, he
Clinton was president.
of the U.S.
Okay.
And he said, we have to get Yeltsin elected because the alternative is a communist and a fascist. And he said, we need Yeltsin to win. And I said, well, he's at 17% in the polls. And
17.
And Clinton said, he thinks he can win. And I said, you're at 30 and you think you can win. But Yeltsin did not know politics. He hadn't been raised in the times of communism, so he had no experience with politics. And we had a funny arrangement. My former business partner worked for Yeltsin and did his polling. then every night he would give me the polling numbers. And I would go to the White House and brief Bill Clinton.
Wow.
And
So
he
Bill
would-
Clinton was the chief strategist of
He was.
Yeltsin.
And he would then get on the hotline that they put in for direct election.
Yeah.
And would say, this is where you need to go. You need to give them this contract. You need to approve this
Wow.
law.
Near Russia, the Ukraine, you work there.
Yeah, I was,
Now the Ukraine is suffering a lot.
yes, I was in Ukraine when they had their revolution. So you had the communists.
The Orange Revolution.
Yeah. You had the communists. And then you had the corruptos, the people who were just out for making money, who exploited the people, who used the resources not to help the people, but to help protect themselves. And they got elected by fraud. And I was in Ukraine, in Kiev, working with them to overcome the fraud and to get an honest count of the ballots.
You work for Yushchenko,
Yes.
the guy who was poisoned.
Yes, he was so tragic. He was a very handsome man. And one time the KGB called him, said, let's get over our feud. Let's make peace with each other. Come to dinner. So he came to dinner and they said, I recommend the soup, the borscht. And he said, oh, good, I like borscht. And he ordered it and he took it. And there was dioxin in it.
Yeah, wow.
And he almost died.
And is it proved that it was the Russians?
You can never prove
You
these
know, proof,
things, but
but-
yeah.
Los ucranianos decían basta. Tras unas elecciones presidenciales tachadas de fraudulentas, 500.000 de personas se movilizaron durante 15 días hasta que consiguieron la anulación de los comicios y el encumbramiento de uno de los líderes de la célebre Revolución Naranja, Viktor Yushchenko.
And then another client of mine was the president of Poland named Kaczynski. And he was anti-Russian, anti-communist, and he was on an airplane and somehow the plane crashed.
Crash. Is your job a dangerous job? Is your career a dangerous career?
A little, yeah.
Why?
Probably it is. Well,
Because of that.
yeah. Well, I do help them get elected, so they may, the other side may not like it very much. But politics in America today has become very dangerous.
Now,
We lock up the people who don't agree with us. There's no way Biden could get reelected. He's too old, he's too senile, he doesn't know where he is most of the time and doesn't know what he's saying. He recently was at a ceremony awarding the Medal of Honor to a soldier, and he just wandered off in the middle of it.
yeah. Completely lost.
Yeah, and he knows the only way he's going to win is to steal the election.
Still,
Steal it.
like in
Like
Latin
it-
America.
Of America. God bless you all.
When Trump said the election was stolen and they're planning to steal it again, they want to lock him up and say he's trying to overthrow the government by spreading rumors that just happen to be true. Let me answer that about 22. There was a laptop where Hunter Biden, Joe's son, who did all the corrupt dealings, had all the notes and talked about the money he was paying to his father and all of that. And and Trump brought it out, published it. And the CIA and the FBI said, oh no, this is Russian disinformation. This is propaganda. This is
Yeah,
phony."
fake news.
Fake news. And now it's been proven to be completely true. And if we knew then what we know now about the truth of that laptop, Biden would never have been elected. So in that sense, yes, I do believe the election was fixed.
What do you think about the word, generally speaking? You know, Is the U.S. losing power? Is China growing up? Which is going to be the future?
Well, that depends on whether we break from the past. Under Biden, because he's bribed by China, China is
the boss.
So powerful. And the U.S. is not, because the president of the U.S. is not fighting for our team, he's fighting for the other team. But basically, when you look at the world, China is in deep trouble. Deep trouble.
Why?
Well, Clinton imposed sanctions, Trump imposed sanctions on them and tariffs. And those tariffs have dried up their exports, dried up their trade. Their unemployment is now very high. And so much of their economy is really phony. It's just state enterprises that, like your state-owned enterprises in Argentina.
Yeah.
They don't make anything, they don't make any money, but they do provide jobs for people, and that's why the parents keep them alive. These political machines always try to keep the people subservient, under them, vassals, but they pay them pensions, or they give them jobs in industries that don't do anything.
It's like the Matrix.
Like what? The Matrix, yes.
Yeah, the film.
Yes, and in a sense, in the Matrix, you have a choice between a red pill and a green pill.
Yeah.
And in a way, I feel that what I do is work to get people to take the green pill and stop taking the red pill.
And do you think that if Trump doesn't win or won't win, and Biden is going to be reelected, the United States is going to be in a strong declination process?
Decline, yes.
Decline?
Well, we are now. The issue is to pull ourselves out of it. Trump was an economic miracle. Before he was president, there was constant unemployment, constant inflation, and major economic problems. He solved all of them. And he did it by getting rid of this governing class that was exploiting the country. And then when Biden came into power, he undid what Trump did, and he went right back. And sometimes the power is not just economic, it's ideological. For example, people who said the most important thing in the world is to fight climate change. And they said, so you got to get rid of all your gas vehicles and fossil fuels.
Practically all the European Union is doing that.
And switch to renewable resources.
Yeah.
And it was destroying America, destroyed our economy. It's been destroying Europe's economy. And these are people who are just so invested financially and personally in perpetuating the idea that the world is coming to an end and we need to switch energy sources. Trump called them out. He said, you're wrong, you're doing this because you're self-interested, you have money invested in this. My old client, Al Gore, who I helped get elected vice president, now has a worth of hundreds of millions of dollars simply because of climate change issues.
And are you a denial of the weather change, the climate change?
I do believe that climate changes over the years, historically. But I don't believe that the solution to it is to cut back the economy. Trump reduced the carbon emissions in the United States by more than Japan or Europe combined. And he cut our oil dependency enormously. And yet China came right in and built all the fossil fuel plants. They open one coal plant every week. And I think that the problem is not that we don't understand climate change, but that we don't understand that you can deal with it without ripping your whole country apart.
Do you know Russian politics pretty well, but you also know Ukrainian politics as well. So what do you think about this war, the current war?
I believe that when Russia invaded Ukraine, it was very important to stand with Ukraine. Just like in Germany in the 30s, you can't just let a dictator take any country he wants and send his army to take over any place he wants. But after 2 years, I think the war has focused on 2 provinces, not the whole of Ukraine, but Donbass. 85% of Ukraine is free and permanently fine. And I don't think it's worth risking a world war for these two provinces. So I think that it's important that the U.S. use its influence to force a peaceful settlement. And Trump says he'll do it in a day, and I think he may. You know, some people say that Trump is too aggressive, too ruthless, but look at North Korea. Kim Jong-un, the dictator, is now visiting Putin in Russia.
Yeah.
And he threatened Trump. He said, I have a button that can destroy the United States. And then Trump said, you have a button, but I have a bigger button.
미국 번터 전역이 우리의 핵 타격 사정권 안에 있으며 핵 단추가 내 사무실 책상 위에 항상 놓여 있다는 것.
Have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime.
미국의 늑다리 미치광이를 반드시 물로 다스릴 것이다.
They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
Dick Morris, consultor político, estratega, muchos dicen el Maquiavelo del siglo XXI, el hombre que está y estuvo detrás de muchos hombres y mujeres que modificaron la historia, la vida de sus pueblos. Thank you very much, Dick.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Wonderful.